Hey there, business owner. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Evolution Podcast. This is our weekly episode, and I'm so happy you are here. Let's get started. Hi there, entrepreneur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Entrepreneur Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Annette Walter. I'm a business growth coach, operational strategist, and growth-minded entrepreneur, just like you, scaling 2 businesses on the national level. I'm so happy you are here. And before I introduce today's guest, I want to share with you a little bit about my take on masterminds, and especially this time of year as you are looking at your mastermind or your accountability group or your business growth coaching group or your peer advisory group, whatever you call it, your group of people that are growing businesses and scaling and witnessing the same pains, struggles, wins, successes, questions, curiosity that you are. To have a group that empowers you to make decisions, to process things in a judgment-free, safe zone, stress-free zone, to really go to a place where you know that they are sharing trusted resources with you, to vent openly, to share wins, and be able to really high five and people be genuinely proud and supportive of you. That's what masterminds are all about, okay? If you don't have one or you have never been a part of one, please come and schedule some time with me so that we can figure out what is the right group for you. I have coached many of the different types of vehicles out there. I have helped them build their businesses. So I've seen them. I've actually sat in a number, and to this day, I still sit in a mastermind. So I live it, I breathe it, I speak it, and I want to help you find the right one for you. The change that you will make personally and professionally is monumental, which is why I am so passionate about this. I host 2 here at iEvolve, our Business Builder Mastermind, and then our Entrepreneur Evolution Empowerment Group Mastermind. And these are both meet bi-weekly, and we cover accountability, checkpoints and check-ins, and then I deep dive into a leadership topic, and then we do accountability check-outs. So it's consistent, it's fresh, it's always on point, and it will not disappoint. So I encourage you to reach out to me, schedule some time. Let's talk about you and your business more. Today's guest is Patti Sanchez of Duarte. She is an amazing chief strategy officer for the company, and she has written numerous books, creates frameworks, and helps clients connect with audience through persuasive presentations and story-based communications. She is also the co-author of an award-winning book, Illuminate, Ignite Change Through Speeches, Stories, Ceremonies, and Symbols, okay? I know that you will grab something from our interview today. Patti is smart, and her perspective will just lend so much to your business, and you are going to gain a lot from today. So Patti, thanks for being here. Let's get started, and I will see you soon, entrepreneur. Keep evolving. I am so proud of you. Welcome, Patti. How are you?
I am great. How are you doing?
I am doing really well. Today we are joined by Patti Sanchez. She is the Chief Strategy Officer of Duarte, and she is joining us today. A wonderful career, has built so much, and I'm just so excited that you are here today with our audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm flattered.
So why don't you start with a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you to Duarte, and then fill us in with a little bit about the company.
Yeah, for sure. I am a communicator. I've been doing it for over 30 years, working first with government institutions and in little boutique consultancies. And over the years, I've really been lucky to be able to work with some very brands, especially with Duarte. And Duarte is a communication firm. We have consulting services, working with the world's largest brands and leaders to help them tell their stories. And then we also have a training organization, which is where I sit today, building products that essentially help people become better communicators on their own.
Okay, great. So tell us about the founding of that company, though, because there is so much in what you just said that it covers so much, but the depth there is just every entrepreneur has and needs and wants, or may not even understand how much they have and need and want, what you just described.
Yeah, well, Duarte has been around for 33 years, founded by a husband and wife, Mark Duarte and Nancy Duarte, who just had a passion for helping people, really, for serving, and discovered that they could do that by helping people communicate better. And it even though it's been around 30 years, it's reinvented itself many times, or maybe not even though, but because of. As any entrepreneur knows, you have to adapt. You have to adapt to the market around you and to your changing customer needs. And so the company's gone through about 8 reinventions in that 30 plus years in business, all of it designed to help people communicate their best.
It's great. And I love your perspective. Before we started the recording of the podcast, you had said, I'm really an entrepreneur. And I am excited for you to share your perspective as a chief strategy officer, what that means, and then how they knew they needed you and what that means to a company and what you do. So describe your role a little bit more.
Absolutely. Well, I as an entrepreneur, what that means is I have led innovation efforts inside the walls of Duarte. I was recruited to join the company about 10 years ago when they were going through their next big growth phase. Nancy had published a book on storytelling. She wanted to create a practice to help people really walk side by side with leaders, craft their stories, and help them bring those to their audiences. And so I built that practice, established the processes and the ways of working, and recruited people to develop that competency. And I've done that a couple of times in the 10 years that I've been there, which again is testament to Duarte's appetite for reinvention, because after building the content practice, then I built the strategy practice, which was a wholly new line of business for Duarte. And then recently, about a year ago, I moved over to head up product for the training side of the business. And in that role today, I'm incubating a new line of business that is going to be a subscription offering. And that's probably the newest territory for us to go into, but it's really exciting.
That's great. So what would you say is your superpower, your kind of genius zone or zone of genius in being the chief strategy officer?
I think listening is a core skill. Because I think that's where insight comes from, listening to our customers. Get on the phone with customers, I survey and interview customers, and I really am trying to deeply understand what do they need now, but what might they need next. And that to me is the essential ingredient in strategy. It's ultimately with strategy, you're trying to draw the roadmap that will take the company into the future. Where do you need to go next? What market do you need to be in? What market do you need to grow or develop? And that starts with knowing what your customers need or what they will need in the future, which can be the harder thing to diagnose, because sometimes they don't even know what they will need. And you have to take some leaps of faith. And so I think that's the other core skill. Call it creativity, call it innovation, call it intuition. But being able to connect some of those random dots, see a pattern, and then say, yes, that's the direction we need to go.
I love it. I love it so much. And it's interesting because not all companies have the chief strategy officer. A lot of times it is the CEO who in fact plays that role. Yeah. So what point would you recommend to companies, through the experience that you've had and what you've seen and how you've grown, that they might need someone in your capacity, in your role?
Well, it doesn't necessarily need to be a full-time position immediately. I would hope that any entrepreneur has a counselor, has a thought partner that they can turn to at any stage of their business and bounce ideas off them, get some validation or some critical feedback. And I say that because that is a role that I play as chief strategy officer. It's a big fancy title, but I facilitate the strategic planning process, but really that is conversation. It's conversation with the CEO, with other members of the leadership team to kind of explore the possible directions we can go to challenge assumptions, to get data to validate those assumptions.
Right.
So whether or not it's a full-time position, it certainly is a function that I think any leader needs. A counselor can give them good advice and pushback maybe when needed.
Absolutely. Well, and it sounds like your good advice is not only from the creative and the innovation side, but like you said, also the process and the formula standpoint, which when you have those two things, it's just gold. So that's great. So you've co-authored a book here, right?
Yeah, well, 5 years ago, Nancy and I co-authored a book together called Illuminate. And that is really about strategy, communication strategy, specifically applied to change. Any sort of movement you want to create, any sort of initiative that you want to execute successfully requires mobilizing other people to say yes and to help you make it a reality. And that's what Illuminate is about. It describes the journey of change and what people feel at each stage of the journey, and ultimately what you need to say and do to meet them where they are and move them where you need them to be.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And change is, I guess, the only constant, right? They say. So
I hear and have experienced too.
So do you see through the different stages of change that there's one that people struggle with the most?
Well, there were really a couple of places where it's hard. So as I described in the book, Illuminate, there are 5 stages to the journey of change, but they were really grouped into 3 acts, which follows a story structure. The first act is when you're starting the change. That can be hard on the leaders because you have to communicate your vision with a lot of clarity, but you also have to articulate it in a way that's very compelling to the people that are going to have to help you make it a reality. So we call those the dream and leap phases. That's the first challenge, I think, for leaders, because they think that if their strategy is smart and they just communicate it really clearly, that everything will happen automatically after that. That's all they need to do is articulate that vision, and then it'll essentially get its own steam. But what they don't realize is that's the beginning of the change journey for everybody else. And you've been living with that vision as a leader, probably for months, if not years. So you're very comfortable with it, right? You're energized by it. And
right,
so
we're on to the next thing already, right?
You're on to the next thing. Exactly. So you're kind of tired of talking about it. You want to talk about it once, make sure everybody really gets it, and then move on to the next thing. But that's the beginning of the journey for everyone else. So that's the first pitfall, I would say, is thinking that you're done when you communicate the vision. The second really challenging part is what we call the messy middle. The messy middle is the fight and climb stages, where essentially people start trying to enact the change or enact your vision, and they run into challenges. Things get hard. The processes don't work. The tools don't work. Mindsets are resistant. And people need the encouragement and the tools, the empowerment to overcome those obstacles and still make progress in the face of those obstacles. And so that's where people can get mired. It can start to feel like a pit because you're running into problem after problem, and that's where they might lose faith. They might lose faith in the strategy because they don't see the signs that it's actually starting to succeed. And so that's a different kind of communication challenge, because the leader in those moments has to make people feel brave and capable of overcoming, but also shine a light on those successes, those small wins, even if they're seemingly insignificant, just to give people confidence that it's worth it, that they're actually moving the needle.
It's so interesting. We talk about the small wins. I was actually on a previous podcast I was recording this morning. We were talking about the small wins and how important they are to celebrate. And those are even sometimes massively more important than the huge, obvious big wins, right? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, because that's what gives people emotional fuel. That messy middle can go on for months, if not years, depending on how big your vision is. And people will get deflated really easily. So you've got to constantly be beating that drum of progress, even if it's little. And what's actually true is those little small wins add up. They start to feel like a big win when you look at them in combination. And so it's important to celebrate those.
That's a really good reminder. And it's interesting because what if you do have a big messy middle? Okay. Your vision is big. You have a big messy middle. Do you break it down into smaller messy middles, or what do you advise there? Because, we always call it a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? The big
Yes.
vision. And so when it is so massive and the messy middle feels so long, what do you typically advise there for owners?
Absolutely. It's funny you should ask that, because in times like that, I think back to advice I got earlier in my life and go all the way back to advice from my mom. And she used to say that things are hard by the yard, but a cinch by the inch. And what I took from that was take those big things, break them into small things, because there's always something small you can do. Even if you don't know exactly all the steps you have to execute well to achieve that BHAG, you can identify a couple of initiatives that'll get you going, that'll give you some initial momentum, and then you evaluate where you are and you set a new plan. It's a lot of little mini plans to get you there.
That's great. This is a really good topic. I really like this topic. And tell us what keeps you going, Patti. What keeps you going through it all? Do you read books? Do you read podcasts? What kind of lights you up and keeps you going? What's your fuel?
I do. I wish I had more time to read. Unfortunately, I had less time this year because I just finished writing a book. So that gave me some fuel, actually, was to put my thoughts down on paper, to encourage other people. And I think that's partly how I'm wired. I'm pretty relational and pretty empathetic. And so what motivates me is hearing a need and rushing to help that person or that group of people. So even in the midst of the pandemic, when our training business collapsed for a minute because all of the in-person training that we offered had to stop, right? So they had to pivot to virtual, and it was a crisis. But what gave me the drive was not just to survive, but to solve the problem, which is, how do I help people keep building their skills even when they can't get on a plane and come to visit us, or we can't do the same? And how can I make that experience the best it can possibly be? How can a virtual workshop actually be better than an in-person workshop?
Right.
So that's what fuels me, is hearing a pain, solving that pain, and along the way, figuring out a better way to do something.
So good. So good. So tell us what excites you about the future and growing the company and just shining in your role.
So many things. We have our own BHAG at Duarte, and our mission is to equip millions of people around the world with the soft skills they need to communicate well. That's inherently really motivating to me and to the people in our organization. So that keeps me going when I talk about it, when I remind people that that's what we're here to do. That's the purpose that we are serving. I see their eyes light up and mine light up too. And it's just so much more motivating to have a higher purpose than simply meeting a revenue goal, a profit goal, but to really help people. And so that's exciting. That's the future that I want to live in, where millions of people are better communicators. And our influence has grown because we've grown the influence of other people. Again, it's not just about us and our business. It's about what are we enabling others to do.
Right. And with the soft skills, and with the way technology is changing, how do people, like, what would be your quick tip for the audience of, different ways to improve them just right now, how we are?
Well, a conversation like this that we're having over Zoom is happening all the time. And so the quick, I don't know if it's a quick tip, but I think it's an essential tip, which is the soft skill we all need right now, is to be better at communicating with each other virtually over Zoom or WebEx or Teams or whatever tool you use. And it starts with not just understanding the technology and getting comfortable with it. I think all of us have used one of these platforms many times over the past year and a half, but learning to love it and learning how to use it to connect with other people. So for instance, right now, I'm trying to look in the camera lens more often than not, because the camera lens is the eye of you and anyone who would happen to be watching. That's how we make eye contact.
Right.
And so it's a practice I've had to get better at, because I want you to feel my presence. I don't want this technology to get in the way of us having a human connection.
Right. Well, here's my little tip. I'll show you. I always keep a little sticky note.
Yes. What does it say?
Smile.
Oh, I love
I
it.
have it right under the camera, just so it reminds you, where to look and where to be present and really where to connect with you and with the audience. Because, I want to look at the screen. I want to look at your face right here on the screen.
Exactly.
But it doesn't connect. Right.
Yeah. Well, my quick tip is
something that changed for everybody. Like, where do I look?
Right. Exactly. And I've rearranged. So I have a second monitor so that I can put the Zoom meeting here right below my camera. And if I were giving a formal presentation and I have slides, my slides are showing on my laptop monitor, and my speaker notes are there under the camera. And it's a hack to make sure that I can look at the camera more often than I'm looking at my notes, and it feels like I'm looking at you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've also been encouraging my team and also me personally to pick up the phone and make traditional phone calls. And I have been having just some amazing conversations connecting with people on the phone. And it's just great. It fuels me and it fuels them. And to make that instant connection that's not through email and another email. And it's just been really powerful. Are you seeing the same thing?
I feel the craving, and I know that others are too. And then the desire to just get off these devices from time to time. And so some people are doing those, or walking meetings, right? Just hop on the phone and take a walk together. Because where I know I am, you probably are too, chained to this device more hours of the day than I used to be. So we have to be intentional about breaking that, doing, going analog sometimes.
Oh, honestly, I can feel how empathetic and kind and amazing you are. I can only imagine how you are in the trainings and with your team. It's so great. So tell us before we say our goodbyes here, what is like a personal mantra or motto that you use or go to when you're having those moments of doubt or fear or whatever, just to kind of pick yourself up?
Oh my goodness. Well, I already told you one: cinch by inch, hard by the yard. I mean, mom's wisdom is something always I go back to.
Yes.
But I guess the other is I've really tried to stay in the moment or in the future. And I know maybe that's not the best thing to do, but sometimes it's what I have to do to escape the stress or worry of the present moment, is to think about the future and why, like you asked me before, why am I excited about the future? And to allow myself to dream, to go to that place, to imagine something different, something better for myself, how much more amazing it's going to be when this project is done and it's out there in the world, or just to know that whatever is troubling me in the current moment will pass, and that there's always tomorrow. And in my experience, ultimately tomorrow is better. So I'm excited about the future.
Great. That's great. So 2 really good tips. Live in the moment, but sometimes in the future if needed, right? To kind of keep going. And tomorrow might be better. I love it. And then your mom's advice: hard by the yard, cinch by the inch. Do I have that right? Okay. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I might use that with my little 11-year-old. Okay, good. All right. So how can we support you? How can we support Duarte? Where can we find the book? Where can we reach you on social media? Share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the latest book is called Presenting Virtually: Communicate and Connect with Online Audiences. And you can find it wherever fine books are sold, although there's a bit of a supply chain challenge if you haven't heard in the current moment. But you can find the print copy through online booksellers, as well as PDF or ebook. And there's an audiobook I just finished up, so that's available, as well as Illuminate, the book on motivating people to embrace your big ideas. That is also available in the same ways. And I lurk on LinkedIn pretty frequently these days, so I accept connection invitations all the time. So feel free to reach out to me there. And I'm also on Twitter at Patti San, Pattisan, on Instagram too, but that's just my personal account. That's going to bore you to tears.
That's so great. Well, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your perspective with us today. This was wonderful. Thank you so much, Patti.
I loved it.
It was
Be well.
great. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye. Wow, what an episode. Did you learn something new? I hope so. I am so happy you were able to be here with us today. I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a review and I will be sure to read it and respond to you. Also, if you'd like to email me, my email address is yourock@iEvolveConsulting.com. Hit subscribe, and every Tuesday you'll get notification when the next episode drops. We really have some amazing interviews and tips in the future. Anything you need, I'm here for you. I want you to keep your momentum. I want to help you stay accountable. I want you to stay inspired. I want you to evolve. So please let me know what you need, and I'd love to hear from you. Take care until next time.